Hello, everyone. My name is Angelique Jackson, film and media reporter at Variety, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this 92nd Street Y conversation about Amazon's Sylvie's Love. And joining me are the cast and producers and director of the film, Tessa Thompson, Nnamdi Asomugha, and Eugene Ashe. Hello, guys.
Hi.
Hi. So we are obviously meeting here virtually to speak about the film. What does it mean to be at this point where it's coming out and people are able to experience this beautiful world that you all created on screen? Eugene, I'll start with you.
It's really exhilarating whenever the work we make and the art that we make is meant to be shared with others. So it's great to see it being born into the world and now to turn it over to the rest of the world,
Yeah. Nnamdi, Tessa, you guys have gotten to talk about this film a little bit when it debuted at Sundance. Now here we are, 10 months later, and the rest of the world is getting a chance to check it out.
Yeah, I think it's incredible. We couldn't have known how it would be released or when. Certainly when we made the film and when it premiered at Sundance. And I don't know about you guys, but I've had this feeling during this time of quarantine and a really tough time in America currently. I thought so much about the utility of story, like why we tell these stories, what they offer. And certainly I think, I felt so lucky to get to make this movie, but one thing that it wants to celebrate, which is this idea of love and joy, it's incredible to be able to offer that to people now at this time, and that they can watch it in the intimacy of their living rooms together with loved ones. It feels like a celebration, not just of romantic love and how sort of enthralling that can be, but the love of family, the love of music, the love of community, the love of your dreams and ambition. And I think, Nnamdi mentioned this earlier, which I hadn't thought about. This movie really speaks to following your dreams. And this is a year where a lot of people, their dreams have been delayed, they feel like their dreams are insurmountable. And so I think being able to offer this little gem, hopefully it makes people feel less alone and to, reinvest in their dreams as we get into this new year.
Absolutely. Nnamdi?
Yeah, I mean, you got to understand how difficult it is to make a movie. It's extremely difficult, especially an independent film where you don't have a studio backing. And so I just think the fact that we were able to make it with this cast and with everybody that surrounded the film, I think it's a bit of a miracle that we're at this point. And so I think it's just, I feel great about it. There's a chance to now sit back and see how it touches people's lives.
Let's talk about that for a second, because like you said, this was an independent movie. This was a labor of love, and something that stands out about it as well is that all three of you were able to be creatives in it together and really work as a team. But it did start in the brain of Mr. Eugene here. So what was it about, I know you were looking at old family photo albums and you love this time period, but what was it about Sylvie and Robert's story that made you have to tell it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the thing about Sylvie and Robert is that it's a love that really talks about selflessness and what you're willing to give up so that the object of your love can thrive. And also being able to choose love for yourself and choose the type of life that you want to have and what should go in your life and what shouldn't go in your life, which is something that I think we've all become very intimate with over this past year. Really, with so much taken away from us, we now are kind of questioning what things we should let back in. So I think it's really, that's a kind of an interesting subject to investigate. And so that was at the core of it. I think the story I wanted to tell, which is a universal story. And then of course, just, pining for those old classic love stories and wanting to see more of them with Black folks.
And Nnamdi, for you, I know it was like immediate. You got a hold of this script and you were like, I want to be a part of this story. So what was that for you? What was it about Robert?
Oh, what was it about Robert? Well, I love when there's something that I can learn from a character, and also just something that I can learn in general. And I think for him, there's a level of vulnerability that I felt like, hopefully if I can tap into that, and when I move on past this character, it can be something that's a part of my life that I don't necessarily have in the tool belt. But then also just being able to play the saxophone, I think was something, just immediately reading the script, that was another thing that I was going to get to learn. And I love that when I read a script and the character is more than just a guy that, you can probably just walk into his shoes in a split second. I love that there's something there that I have to fight for and something I have to learn internally and externally. So yeah, it was pretty immediate for me in terms of character for those reasons.
And Tessa, I know Eugene was saying that he was looking for someone with an Audrey Hepburn kind of vibe. He wanted to get to see this woman be so glamorous, and also this, hardworking, innovative turn of the decade rather. What was your key? What was your way into Sylvie when you bringing her from the script to the screen?
Well, much like Eugene, I looked at a lot of family photographs, and I had, luckily had spent my whole childhood looking at photographs of my grandmother. And then when I was old enough, sneaking into her closet and looking at her clothes and trying them on, I was always just fascinated by her and by women of that time. And so many of the reference points, Audrey Hepburn in particular, I remember Eugene expressing that he wanted it to feel like the first time that you see her on screen in Breakfast at Tiffany's. And I certainly remember the first time I saw her. And to be honest, that felt like a very tall order because I've been working for over a decade, but have not really been in that leading lady space an awful lot. And I think that has to do with the industry, frankly. And so there was a part of me that as much as I loved the idea and romanticized the idea of getting this sort of star treatment like that, I wasn't sure that I could, they were big shoes to fill, that sort of natural poise and charisma that those starlets had at that time. So much like Nnamdi, I love the idea of character being able to ask of me things that I'm uncertain I am capable of. I think that moment, that tension when you get an opportunity and then you have the impending dread as to whether or not you're capable of it, to me, that is the most exciting place from which to work. And then certainly this is something that Eugene has spoken about many times, but not allowing us as Black people the breadth of our humanity is a way of diminishing our humanity. And so I had worked on films like Selma, for example, that obviously center the movement. And I also, love to hold space for the idea that, Malcolm had a lot of children and Martin had children, and they had children because they fell in love and they made love. And so this idea of centering that, of centering the interpersonal, I remember Eugene talking about if you could, really zoom in on a Gordon Parks photograph. And it's not to say that you take out the historical context, but that you decide for that moment in time to focus instead on the interpersonal. And I thought that was such an interesting idea, and certainly something that isn't done an awful lot. And then I started to think about all the incredible films that would have been made in the 50s and 60s that would have included Black and brown faces if that was in vogue during the time. And so I thought this was a really interesting way to make a film sort of in that spirit. And then I was so struck by Eugene's ability to also create a character that felt very modern and didn't feel like a throwback. Even in this time, being able to chart your own path is not something that's easy for all people. So I love that Sylvie's doing that and doing that in spades. I mean, she makes a couple of questionable choices, but I love that too.
That's kind of the fun of it too, is that, you know, in a movie like this and in life in general, we don't always do the right thing the first time. We don't always communicate well, which that is the primary issue between these two. But they also love each other so much that they don't want the other person to have to sacrifice it all for them. It is about so many big themes. But while we were on that topic, Eugene, I do want to speak to you about that decision, that there is so much Black nuance where the Black people are fully realized in their Blackness, but we are not focusing primarily on the struggle and the adversity that we face. What was it like, you know, finding that space in this film?
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, look, from the beginning, we talked about not framing it through our struggle or trauma and just kind of focusing on our humanity and telling a very human story. You know, it's kind of, who knew it was such a revolutionary idea at the time, but as it turned out, it was. But it's just important, as Tessa said, you know, to show that we existed and that we are resilient, even in the face of adversity. And, you know, one thing about these two, with this story, I just wanted to kind of go back to what Tessa was saying, just because, you know, I talked about wanting, you know, I wrote the script originally. When I first wrote it, I wasn't thinking of any actor in particular. I was thinking of Sidney Poitier and Diane Carroll and writing it as though I was writing it for them. And when I met these two, they both had this, like, these qualities that just reminded me of actors from that time. Yeah. And so, you know, I remember one time, Tessa brought something really modern to it, and just who she is. You know, we were shooting a scene, and Tessa was like, I don't understand how you want me to do it. And I was like, you know, it's like Dar's Day. And she was just like, well, I can't do it like Dar's Day. I got to do it like me, baby. And I was like, okay. And it just really, you know, it really made me realize I was in the middle of something bigger than me, bigger than the script that I had envisioned. And we were really creating something new and something that was a collaboration that I had never really counted on, and in a way that I had never counted on. And they both just brought so much of themselves, as much as they think Nnamdi may say he's not, you know, he doesn't have this vulnerability in his toolcase. I'm not so sure that that's true. You know, I saw it from the very beginning. What'd you say?
I said he's such a softie.
That's right. That's right. I saw it from the beginning. I just tried to, it was like coaxing it out, you know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
Well, I mean, like you said, Tessa, also, it is kind of a tall order, because at one point, Eugene, did you also call these two Chocolate Redford and Coco Streisand? You know, talking about that the way we were moment.
Coco Streisand, that's right. Okay. Earlier, Nnamdi referred to me as an oat milk Streisand, which I take issue with. I take it. Thank you very much.
No, I should have used.
He would butter pecan.
I should have used oat milk. I used cashew milk. Yeah. Or almond milk, but yeah, it's great.
Oh, wow.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, look, what I was interested in was the chemistry of those classic pairings of a Robert Redford and Barbra Streisand, of a Sidney Poitier and Diane Carroll, you know, of a Billy D. Williams and Diana Ross. That was the most important thing. When we look at those movies, that's the thing that we really want. So these two, you know, we went through a rehearsal process, and they were already kind of starting it. And we shot in a certain way that we could see the chemistry kind of develop organically over it. We didn't start with the love scenes, you know, we started with you know, her standing outside and they haven't seen each other in 5 years. So, you know, it was kind of by design, the way that we worked it out. And it was, we did allow it to develop organically. But in the end, I thought that the chemistry between these two, sorry to talk about you listening, but I mean, the chemistry is spectacular between them. And it reminds me of those classic pairings. You know, people are going to be like, they're going to want to see them in the next one and the next one and the next one. It's just, and I love that, you know, we were doing an interview together and people were, and the woman was calling Nnamdi Robert and calling Tessa Sylvie. They were just calling them by their character names. Which
You
I
know
thought,
what's so sweet, Eugene? I haven't told you my little sister, it keeps saying how much she misses Sylvie.
aw.
It's very sweet, and Mrs. Robert, and yeah, my family. It's a huge hit with my family, and my family doesn't. You know, they're very supportive of me, but they don't like things just because I'm in it. But they do. They really took such a liking to Sylvie and Robert and those characters. So I love that idea, and also just in terms of film iconography, that we get to occupy that space. It's not lost on me that still feels, unfortunately, like a rarefied thing, you know.
Yeah, it does. That's a great point.
What was that first scene that y'all read together? And you were like, this is gonna work. We've got this.
Gene, you remember that? I can't even remember the first.
I mean, early on, we did some of the stuff like the walk on the first night home, like from when you met each other. We did the when you first met in the record store. Went over a couple of those. We waited for the argument, for, you know, the kind of argument at the end. I let you guys kind of, you know, get to know each other a little bit. I didn't want to just come, you know, guns blazing.
Yeah, you've got to build to things like that.
Yeah, it's important to build, you know, we do it in real life, right? We don't just,
Yeah.
hi, how are you? No, I don't know, Robert.
One of my favorite scenes in the film is the "see ya later, alligator" moment. There's Nnamdi isn't the only one who gets to have a musical moment in this movie. So we get to see Sylvie, you know, acting out her little song and dance streams. What was it like? Not only getting to perform that number because it's so fun and sweet, but as that phrase then evolves into the storyline between these two, and now "see you later, alligator" is going to be one of those romantic lines in film history.
Yeah, well, that was such an incredible construction of Eugene's, and I think something that this film hopefully brings to audiences is sort of leaving that kind of cynicism behind. And I felt that even as a performer, because frankly, when you're dealing with modern material, you don't often get to do things and have set pieces in a film that are just sweet or like adorable or sort of charming and easy. So I had to check myself, because even as a performer, I was like, I don't know if I can make this work. And it was Eugene was so sure and also so lovely with that process of telling me the sort of reference, the sort of film legacy that I was playing inside of, and being able to find a way to make that feel really authentic. And also, I think it's a part of the tapestry of the film. Like, one of my favorite moments in the whole thing is Carmen, Eva Longoria's number. And I think that that's something that used to happen in cinema all the time, that you would just have a musical act in the middle of a film. I was watching a film the other night and that happens, because it was, you know, in the 40s. And that was such an incredible time in you know, American filmmaking. And it's really fun to think of a whole new generation that isn't familiar with that style of filmmaking, that they get to see this and enjoy it. And it's, I don't know, it's really incredible. So I think once I understood sort of the world that I was playing in, it was such a joy to do that. And also in the context of Sylvie and Robert, to make that really sweet moment in the film pay off and have resonance for the characters over time. And the truth is, I think particularly when we're falling in love, those moments, you do remember them forever. And that moment when you first sort of have a nickname or have an inside joke with someone that you're coming to love and to know, those moments are huge, and they reign supreme in your memory and your mind. So I thought that was such a beautiful part of this story and in Eugene's screenplay.
Nnamdi, for you, what what are some of those moments that particularly stuck out to you in this love story that, you know, are the ones that you will think of when you think of this experience?
Oh, I love, this was tricky because we never really, it wasn't really a part of it going forward, but we figured out that we needed to flash back in certain instances, whether it was like through quick montages or whatever it might be. And those moments, as I watch the film today, are the moments that really get me, because I think when you're making a film, if you have a narrator or something like that in the film, it makes it easier, you know,
Oh no, I think we
able to have, did you lose me?
Yeah, for just a second. So
it makes it easier.
Thanks, Tessa.
Sorry, if you have a narrator, it makes it means I'm listening.
So if you have a narrator, it makes it easier to sort of follow a story. And when it's something so, I guess, well written and like intricate and complex, like this story, you need some of those moments to bring you back into the love and the reasons why they made the decisions that they made. And so in that third act, you get a couple of those, and they're refreshing moments for me.
we also mentioned earlier about the saxophone playing, that you wanted to have that as a challenge. I mean, you've dedicated so much time to learning how to play the saxophone. Just how good did you get?
I mean, I think I was pretty good. I'm not very good at all right now, but at the time, I was good. Like I could play. Eugene made sure to get me all of the songs that Fabrice, our composer, had put together, and he got them to me early. He got them to me about a year before we started shooting, and I would talk with him all the time, like what section of this song is most important for the film. I could at least get that part down, and I would learn it. But there was certainly a lot of support on his end to just keep going with the saxophone. It was something I wanted to do that I felt it would help with the character, and it really did. There was a point where I was more comfortable holding the saxophone case than not holding it, and I felt like that was key, because I felt like Robert was that. You know, like he was more comfortable with it. And that's when I started to know that it was really starting to play and work out.
You start to know the man and that you're embodying. And
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And in Sylvie's case, we're getting to follow her. You know, we talked about this a little bit already, but in this turn of the century where she is getting a chance to become the thing she always dreamed of being, but never really imagined was real, and becoming a television producer. You know, what was it like getting to explore those changing gender roles in the 50s and 60s through this film? Tessa, I'll start with you.
Oh, it was incredible. You know, not for nothing, Hollywood is not entirely done with being, you know, vaguely a male dominated space, and it's still hard to you know, lobby for personal power. And I feel thankful, you know, Eugene can attest to this. This, you know, is a part of my journey in producing, and Eugene and Nnamdi both invited me into that process. I have always, you know, I really envy the kind of actor that can be very focused on just their contribution. And I'm a meddler, you know, I'm interested in what everybody's doing. And I feel really grateful that Eugene invited me into that space. And it really feels rewarding, because when I look at the film, I feel a part of the DNA of the project, and not just because of my contribution as an actor, but also my contribution as a producer. And that experience has really endeared me to produce even more. So this year, most of my focus all this year has been in producing television, and it's been such a gift. And Sylvie was, you know, in a big part, a continued inspiration for that. And to think of women at that time that were defying, you know, the norms of the time and their societal expectations is really incredible. incredible. And the truth is, you don't do that alone. You have to have co-conspirators. And so I'm really grateful to Eugene and Nnamdi for being my co-conspirators in this. And certainly it's inspiring when you look at the love that Sylvie and Robert have. A part of it is also that he's the first man in her life, and in some ways the first person to really see her dream and be excited by it. That was something that we talked a lot about, that he needs to also be falling in love with her ambition and her dreams, and she with his. And I love that. I love that about their love.
Nnamdi, I'd love to get your perspective on that too, because that is the thing. That's part of why, you know, the film works so well, is that idea that both of them have these big dreams, and because both of them want the other one to accomplish their big dream, you know, that is one of their primary struggles through their love.
It is. And, you know, I think we were talking about vulnerability earlier. I just think the fact that they're able to, at some point, communicate with each other. You know, it's a little rocky throughout, but I think the lesson learned that is that when you actually do get to communicate with each other, you can get through those tough spots. And I appreciated actually not just their vulnerability, but also how Eugene wrote vulnerability into Lacey's character.
Yes. Yeah, Lacey is in no way just, you know, the guy that's in the way.
Yeah, Lacey being another guy that has to communicate with his wife in a certain way and get his feelings across. And, you know, and he gets emotional and he starts to, you know, it's a big deal for him. And we don't see that a lot on screen, especially with Black males. So, you know, kudos to Eugene for even just putting that in with all of the sort of male characters, just finding that way for them to communicate more and break through that wall of, you know, I'm macho and I don't do this, you know, so that was great.
Eugene, you know, please, no, go ahead.
I just wanted to add that, you know, I love that their love is sort of rooted in passion, and passion not just for, you know, romantic passion, but passion for their art and passion for what they want to become in an aspirational way. And that they have an incredible, because it's something that they each possess, they can recognize it in each other and realize the importance to self-actualization, and that, you know, letting someone become the best version of themselves. And when you really love somebody, you want them to be that way. And then Lacey, you know, he's a very nuanced character, but he seems a little more preoccupied with his own ambition and aspirations, wanting his wife and his family just to sort of be almost like possessions in all of the things he's trying to accumulate. So
Lacey is like the epitome of keeping up with the Joneses for me. He's doing what in some ways what he has to do to succeed. He's got to have the wife, he's got to have the kids, he's got to, you know, what else is he going to do to move on up? And unfortunately, that means his wife's dreams aren't a priority.
But there's a greater, actually, just to go one level deeper, there's and this is something in the subtext of it that I spoke to Alano about. What it really also talks about is this exodus of Black folks who were aspirational once they could move into the suburbs because of civil rights opening things up and us integrating. They really left Harlem, you know, and they left certain people behind. So there's also that inherent in that, you know, this willing to leave other people behind. So there's a little something, you know, it's a selfish kind of aspirational goal. So
can we talk about the layers of all of these characters? That's the other thing that stands out so much, is that all of the supporting roles in this film could all have their own films too, because they're all so deep and interesting. And then of course, incredible actors in the ensemble as well. How did you assemble this fantastic cast, and what was it like getting a chance to have so many people running around just being great?
I mean, it was really terrific. We were very lucky. Pretty much everyone who we approached, you know, wanted to do it. If they couldn't do it, it was basically it was a scheduling issue. But people really recognized pretty early and from the script what we were trying to do, and they were here for it. But yeah, it was really fantastic. We wanted to kind of put together an ensemble that you hadn't really seen before. A lot of people like Tone Bell, who's a comedian, who you know that way, playing a dramatic role. You know, just we have a lot of different people playing outside of what you usually see them playing. And yeah, just wanting to create a new ensemble so that you could really get lost in this world and you're not thinking about the roles that they've played in other, you know, in other films. But it was fantastic to play. And if we left everything in that we shot, we'd have a 3.5-hour movie. So a lot of that nuance comes from the fact that they did have a little bit more to work with in the script. But when you cut it down, what that does is they were really invested in the part, and you can still get it and glean it just from the scenes that they're in, you know?
Yes, listen, I could watch the miniseries version of this any day. Well, as we're wrapping this up, I think we should definitely acknowledge the idea that this is a 92nd Street Y conversation, and this is a film that is very much has its heart in the New York City world. So what was it like getting to kind of create 50s and 60s Harlem, and also bringing the jazz age to this modern era?
Well, we shot the entire thing in Los Angeles.
That part's true too.
But you know, I was born and raised in New York, and spent the first 10 years of my life living in Harlem, in the neighborhood that is depicted in the film. And my mother lived there her entire life, and my dad's from the Bronx. So I had a lot of source material. But you know, ultimately, it's just about capturing the essence of a place. Quite frankly, downtown Los Angeles looks more like New York in 1962 than New York does these days. So it's about knowing what to put in the frame. And but it was really spectacular. And we're not the first people to do it. You know, Sparkle, set in 1976, was supposed to be all Harlem, and they shot on the Warner Brothers lot in the same area that we did. So that was really kind of nice. You know, we were really just interested in making a classic and depicting New York in this really glamorous way that makes you want to move there, you know?
I wish, Angelique, I wish you could see Eugene when we were scouting locations, talking about every film that filmed in that particular location. Everywhere we went, he's like, oh, they filmed, you know, whatever, they filmed it. Well, how do you know all of this? But that was, you know, that's his lane. Like he knew it. It was great to watch.
Listen, y'all had a real film historian and just general life historian at the helm of this. So it really helps when you're delving into that period time. You know, I guess wrapping this up for real, at the end of the day, what have you heard the most about this movie that has touched you? Because as people have started to see it, and even just as the trailers and the posters and everything have rolled out, people have been so, you know, enraptured by this story. What means the most to you about the reception Sylvie's Love has been getting? Nnamdi, I'll start with you.
Oh, I think it goes back to the first thing that that I talked about, which was basically the miracle of it. Just getting it made. First and foremost, that being a miracle, because it's tough to get a film like this made. All of the no's that we went through, getting into Sundance, not knowing that a pandemic was going to happen, selling it to Amazon, thinking it was going to come out in the summer, but it actually gets to come out at the end of the year, and it's such a tough year, so that people can be able to exhale and really be excited watching this. I don't know, but just anytime someone says, I really love the film, it touches me, because what we wanted to do was make a film that was in the theaters, you know, that you could sit back and watch, and it was big and you can hear it and just fall in love. And everyone's watching it on their laptops and their iPads, and they're still getting that same feeling. That's just very rewarding as a filmmaker. You know, you have all of these plans, and when it starts going a different direction, you don't know what's going to happen. And it went in a direction that was actually better than what we planned. And I'm just, you know, overwhelmed by it.
And Eugene, for you?
Yeah, like Nnamdi said, you have all of these plans, and what you learn, and what we certainly have all learned this year, is that you throw the plans out the window, because there are other forces much greater than you that are at the helm of the ship. So being able to roll with the punches. And the biggest thing is that it just, these movies get made when they want to get made, and they get made with the people who are supposed to be in them, and they get made, for the times that they're supposed to be made in. And if you're lucky, you land in this place where you create something and it takes on a whole new meaning because of with external forces, so the biggest thing that fills me up is when people are like, I need this so much right now. I needed this movie. And that's what I've heard. That's just been insane. Like, after the year we've had, I need this movie. It's like, okay, but yeah. That wasn't the intention. We didn't know a pandemic was coming. And, in a different world, somebody might need something else at this time. But when you land when you're in the right place at the right time, and you have the right thing that people need at the right time, it's a really magical thing that's outside of yourself. And, it's whoever created us all at work,
And of course, we have to wrap up with Sylvie herself. Since it is Sylvie's Love we were speaking about, what is...
I couldn't have said it better myself. I really thought about the idea of need. And that's the thing that I've heard, when my family watched it just the other night, they said, well, I needed this. This idea, which I think we've thought a lot about during this year, of what's essential. And I think that, something that brings me real joy in being able to tell stories is this idea that you can tell a story that makes someone feel less alone. And I think that is when you're maybe doing something, right? It isn't everything, but it's something. And so this idea of making something that right now, for whatever reason, for a confluence of so many reasons, feels essential, that feels really special to me. And obviously this movie was made with a tremendous amount of love. It was a labor of love to make the thing. And so when I'm hearing that people love it, that means a lot. That really means a lot.
Well, thank you for sharing your on-screen love, this off-screen collaboration. It's so wonderful and inspiring to get to be a part of this Sylvie's Love journey. And thank you so much to the 92nd Street Y for having and hosting this conversation with the stars, producers, and writer and director of Sylvie's Love, Amazon Sylvie's Love, which is coming to Amazon Prime Video on December 23rd. Spread the word and enjoy, everyone.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.